Good morning and welcome to Housing Colorado's webinar, Housing Plus Education. I'm Kirsten Vermeulen, Director of Education and Membership Programs here at Housing Colorado, and it's a pleasure to have so many of you joining us from all over the state. Many thanks for taking time out of your busy days to participate in our webinar. As many of you know, Housing Colorado is a statewide multi-sector voice for affordable housing, serving a growing network of over 5,000 professionals through our education, information, and advocacy efforts. We believe our communities benefit when everybody has a place to call home. Our webinar series is hosted by Kephart, Community Planning and Architecture, and we're very grateful for their in-kind services, so many thanks to Kephart. Our series this year is co-hosted by the Human Services Network of Colorado. The network creates opportunities to improve the quality and integrity of services provided to vulnerable populations via training and networking. Just a quick orientation to your screens. You will see that there's a questions tab to the right. Please do, as questions arise for you, note questions in that questions tab. We'll collect all of your questions throughout the webinar today, and following our presenters' remarks, we'll go ahead and have an active Q&A session. So many thanks in advance for your active participation there. As many of you know, the availability of stable, affordable housing has a direct impact on student and school success. Research has shown that students who miss school frequently due to moves have lower test scores and overall school performance. Homeless children miss up to 25% of school days due to a range of circumstances, but certainly due in part to a lack of safe and stable housing. In Colorado, more than 21,000 children experience homelessness. The most talented teacher cannot make up for that loss of classroom time. Today we're excited to learn about a successful model, the Next Steps program. It's a partnership between the Housing Authority of Grand Junction, the school district in Mesa County, local nonprofits, all working together to stabilize families, improve education outcomes, and break the cycle of homelessness. Our presenters today are Lori Rosendahl, Director of Operations, Grand Junction Housing Authority, and Cathy Holler, Prevention Services Coordinator, District 51, Department of Education, again in Mesa County. A little bit about our presenters. Lori Rosendahl has worked for the Grand Junction Housing Authority for 11 years. She started her career with Grand Junction as a housing specialist and is now the Director of Operations. Lori currently is responsible for the oversight of supportive services, property management, maintenance, eligibility, and voucher teams. She's a certified paralegal and has many certifications in housing, including multifamily manager, HQS inspector, housing specialist, and tax credits. Lori is also serving on the Colorado NARO board and is president of Homeward Bound of Grand Valley. And Cathy Holler is the Prevention Services Coordinator for Mesa County Valley School District 51 in Grand Junction. She has a master's degree in education and an administrative certification. She's been with the district for 23 years, 13 as an elementary school teacher, and the last 10 in her administrative role. Her responsibilities include the development, implementation, and coordination of programs in the district and community that support students who are at risk for academic, behavioral, and socio-emotional issues.
All right, thank you. Appreciate you having us. Cathy and I have been working together since about 2004 is probably when we first began talks to start something like this. Our actual first talks began at a meeting that Cathy came to talk about her homeless school children, and at the time in Mesa County we had a pretty high vacancy rate. So we were trying to think of ways we could fill some of our units, yet assist some of the families that Cathy was seeing. So we came together and approached the Colorado Division of Housing about utilizing some funding, some home funds to start this program. The Division of Housing stepped on board and helped us. In the first round in 2006, we received enough funds to house 50 families. So we started with 50. In 2006, and then again in 2008 we were awarded more funding to continue. We continued with 50. One of the things that we did learn with doing 50 families was that it was a lot for one case manager, especially with the level of case management we were asking them to do. And so the next round that we received in 2010, we reduced that number to 30. So we now are serving 30 homeless families, and we are using tenant-based rental assistance, and that is a form of home funds through the Division of Housing. It's important that you be able to use funding other than vouchers for this program, and I'll tell you why. Vouchers uses a model of, it's more of an entitlement model, so once they receive the voucher, there's not a whole lot of requirements you can place on them. With the tenant-based rental assistance, you can place more requirements on the family. So we can require them to attend meetings with our case manager. We can require them to keep their kids in school and some other things that we'll talk about later. But the type of funding for the program is important. It also requires a $100 minimum rent, which is also important for these families to have some form, a larger tenant portion than the voucher program calls for. So along with our 30 coupons, tenant-based rental assistance coupons that we received from the Colorado Division of Housing, we received funding for a full-time case manager through TANF, and that was through our Mesa County Department of Human Services, our Mesa County Workforce Center folks. So they provide us with the funding for the full-time case manager. The City of Grand Junction stepped up and gave us some CDBG funding for some of our administrative expenses to get us started. You know, CDBG can be used once for administration, so we used that up a long time ago, back in 2006. But it did help us get started. The School District 51, of course, provides us with the REACH advocates that help us with the school district piece, and they're a referral source. We have Catholic Outreach, which provides us with a referral source. The Almost Home Guide, which is a guide of affordable rentals in Mesa County that we use. They also provide our families with some rental assistance in certain cases. So if they need a deposit, there is certain cases where they can receive rental assistance and utility payments from Catholic Outreach. Homeward Bound of the Grand Valley, which is our local homeless shelter, is also a referral source, as is Latimer House, our domestic violence shelter. They're a referral source, and they also provide the domestic violence counseling that a lot of our families have needed, and they do that for free for us. United Way gives us administrative and tenant services funding every year. We've been successful in getting that for the last, I believe, 4 or 5 years. So I will let Cathy talk a little bit about the educational impact of homelessness, and then also about her REACH program, and then we'll get more into how we structured our program and the services that we provide.
As you can see on the screen, there's huge impact to children when they are in homeless or temporary or transitional housing situations. On average, those kids move 3 or more times during the school year. And research says that for every school move, a student needs 3 to 4 months to recover academically and socially. So most of our kids who are homeless students who are moving 3 or more times, that school year is a wash for those kids, academically and socially. 27% of our homeless students do not even attend school. So that's an outreach issue. That's finding those kids, because obviously a school-based system has only access to the kids that they know are there. So it's important to have some kind of outreach and community partners that can help you identify kids that need to be in school. Statistically, kids who are homeless suffer 4 times the rate of their housed peers from emotional and behavioral problems. 36% of homeless children repeat a grade, and those students are no less capable than their housed peers. It's just the learning gaps due to the mobility issues that cause them to have that rate of retention. 14% of homeless students are suspended. Again, for homeless students or for all students, it's really easier for them to appear to be naughty than it is for them to appear to be stupid. So we have acting out behaviors, oftentimes because of the lack of connections and also because of the huge learning gaps. One of the really disconcerting figures that comes out of the national policy folks are that 68% of students who miss 20 or more days in 1 year during 1st, 2nd, or 3rd grade will eventually drop out. And as was stated at the very beginning of the webinar, those kids frequently have attendance issues, missing 25 days or more. So 68% of those kids have a higher potential of dropping out, even if we're talking about absences in the very early grades. Nationally, 50% of high school age students drop out. 41% of identified homeless people are in families, and that is the fastest growing homeless population, is families with children, and actually young children under 5 is an even bigger growing problem than older school age kids. We have our services, our homeless assistance program is called REACH, and REACH stands for Resources, Education, and Advocacy for Children Who Are Homeless. And that is actually the McKinney-Vento Homeless Children's Educational Assistance Act is the federal law we operate under. It's also Title 10 of No Child Left Behind. And what it says that families in temporary transitional housing have the right to certain things, and that is immediate enrollment. Oftentimes our families show up to schools without birth certificates, immunization records, residency requirements, and under this law we enroll those students immediately. They have to be actively participating within 24 hours, and then we have a team of advocates that will work with the family and the schools to complete those records. Those families also have immediate access to free breakfast and lunch programs. Generally speaking, a family that qualifies for free breakfast and lunch has to go through an application process that is approved through the school administration and then through the Food Service Administration, and that takes a good deal of time. And so during that application process, breakfast and lunch charges are accruing, and those are charges that those families can't possibly pay back, which becomes a problem with school fees. So our homeless families are immediately, upon enrollment, eligible for free breakfast and lunch program. They also have a right to the same access to educational programming that their student qualifies for. So that means special education services, English as a second language services, those kinds of things those kids are eligible for. They have categorical eligibility for Title I services because they are obviously below the poverty line. The problem is with frequent school moves, oftentimes those kids aren't able to access that programming because they don't stay around long enough to be determined eligible. So we request and we support the schools in kind of bumping them to the top of the list so that we can do eligibility determinations for kids and get them into the programming that they're eligible for. Free transportation to the school of origin is on a case-by-case basis, but if a child is identified in one school as being homeless and then their situation necessitates that they move to a different residence, we can keep them in that school. And that's really important because these kids have such a hard time making peer relationships, adult relationships, because they move so often. And so if we can keep them in a school for an entire school year, they're much more able to make those connections, and that really helps increase their academic achievement when they feel like they belong and they feel like they're connected at their school. The final thing that we do that we must do by law is connect with community resources. We can oftentimes, as a matter of fact, most times, we can support their school-related needs, but we really can't help them with the non-school-related needs, the basic needs, and that's where we rely on our community partnerships. And that's really how we got at the table with the Housing Authority and the other agencies that Lori noted, was because we knew that as much work as we did around stabilizing them at school, if they didn't have some support with their basic needs being stabilized, we were going to be just fighting a losing battle. So we really got ourselves to the table so that we could at least connect families with places that could help them with other needs. In front of you is just kind of the years that we started our program in 2002, 2003. That's when we became, by law, required to respond to the McKinney-Vento Act as a school district. And you can see that we've had some fluctuation, but our lowest identification year was 2006, and that was more due to structural changes and personnel changes. we have to really develop trusting relationships with these families, or they won't kind of allow themselves to be identified. So that was that. But we believe that at any given time in School District 51, there's approximately 500 students that qualify under this law, and we probably are not seeing about 20%, because that's statistically the kids that don't enroll. And then the number of families that translates to is there as well. As you can see, we have multiple agency partners, and I've probably accidentally left some of them out. But all of the areas really of things that, again, we can't cover are covered by our agency partners: housing, food, clothing, shelter, those kinds of things. So that's just a probably not complete list, but pretty close list of who our agency partners are. Then there's our even bigger list, and our community partners have been wonderful about providing our program with, again, the non-school related needs. We have partnerships with community folks and individuals and businesses that will provide every year hygiene supplies that our advocates can just give to our families when we enroll them. School supplies, backpacks. They'll donate cash to us so that we have a small fund. So if a student needs, say, black shoes because of a band concert, we can go ahead and do that for them. Students who want to be involved in club sports, you know, our Grand Mesa Little League or whatever, we can get folks who will scholarship our kids in and then outfit them with their uniforms. So all of these, and again, this is not an inclusive list because I'm sure there's someone I've forgotten, plus numerous community, just individuals help us with those non-school related needs. And we have spent the last 8 years developing these partnerships and really nurturing them so they continue to walk alongside us to support kids.
So I'll talk a little bit about who's eligible for the program and how we get referrals, but families are eligible most of our referrals come from School District 51's REACH program, and they must be identified as homeless under the McKinney-Vento Homeless Education Act, and that's the key to using these home funds, is that we're able to use that McKinney-Vento definition rather than using HUD's definition, so this broadens our ability to help people. Families have to be at or below 30% of area median income, which is something that we found kind of challenging at first because some of our families were working full-time jobs. They just didn't have enough money to get into a place, and if a family's working full-time, most of the time they did not qualify. So we're talking about helping families that really come to us with very little or no income. They come to us at the very low end of the wage scale, and so we work really hard to help them build that back up. And they have to agree to actively participate in case management and address any barriers to self-sufficiency and then any issues resulting in their housing situation. It could be that they have bad credit. They may have substance abuse issues. We need to get them enrolled in some alcohol treatment. A lot of times it's domestic violence, and so we get them over to Latimer House. Sometimes it's just that they don't know exactly how to keep a home, and that goes all the way from keeping it clean to communicating with the landlord to paying their rent on time, all of those various things that we start with families who come to us, and a lot of these families have been chronically homeless. This isn't their first go-around with homelessness when they come to us. So we really work to help them understand the importance of taking care of their unit, understand the importance of their relationship with the landlord, and understand how important it is to take care of the property. No, it's not their property, but we really are teaching them to respect the landlord's investment. Some of the expectations we place on the families have to pay 30% of their income for rent with a minimum rent of $100. We pay the remaining amount directly to the landlord. Works a lot like a housing choice voucher, except the minimum rent is a little higher. Families can choose where they want to live, and that's important. That's been one of the key things with us in this program. We've had people ask us, why don't you just build the building? Well, that doesn't work with what we're trying to do, and that is keep families in the school district that they started with. We don't want these kids to move schools, so in the school area. We want them to stay in that same school. We want them to stay with their friends, to move forward. And so if we were to build a building, that would kind of defeat that purpose. Families are required to comply with the intensive case management, and they are required to comply for 2 years. It can be quite intense. I mean, if they're not doing well, our case manager can be at their house 2 times a week, checking in, making sure things are going well, helping them get the things that they need. All of our school-age children must attend school regularly. That's another requirement. We have had to terminate only one family so far, but she didn't make her 12-year-old child go to school. And you know, we gave lots and lots of options. We did some options for some homeschool, and she just wasn't interested. So we ended up having to terminate one family for that so far. But that's a huge requirement to be in this program, is that you invest in your kids' education, you check their grades, you're checking with the school, and the beauty of this is that we have the REACH advocates who we can contact and say, look, you know, we don't understand why Joe Jr. is not going to school. Can you help us with that? And they can intervene and help us get with the teachers, find out what's going on, and then help us, you know, get that navigated. The other thing that's nice about this program is after their 2 years, if they have done everything we've asked them to do and they've complied, we can, if they're eligible, transfer them directly into a voucher. In Mesa County, you have to earn $14 an hour to afford a modest 2-bedroom apartment. A lot of our families, at their maximum potential, at their maximum self-sufficiency, if you want to call it, could earn $10 to $12 an hour in this community. There's not a ton of $14 an hour jobs here. So they still need our rental assistance, but yet they're doing everything they can to move forward. So we'll move them into a regular voucher. So they'll have some long-term assistance, and they don't just fall off the cliff and start over again. That was really important to us. Our case management and supportive services that we provide, we have a housing authority case manager, again, paid for by the Workforce Center and the Department of Human Services. Our case managers have culture of poverty training. We have a full-time case manager who also is a certified culture of poverty trainer. Bridges out of poverty trainer, excuse me. She's certified under the Ruby Payne model. So we train all of our staff, plus all of our families are required to go through that training. We provide some wraparound services, and we aim them at the entire family. So we're not just looking at the parents, we're looking at the needs of the children. Some of the children may need medication. We've had families whose children needed ADHD medication. We were able to get them hooked up with that. We've had families whose, one example is we had a family with a teenage child that really wanted to wanted to do track, and he was really a good athlete. We were able to get a hold of REACH, who got him the track shoes and then got him into track for us without having to pay all the fees. So that was great, and he's doing really well. We have we address the employment barriers, and that could be drug, alcohol abuse, GED classes, mental health counseling. I mean, the list goes on. This is just a short list of all of the things that we address with these families. Supportive services, we provide through some grant funders such as United Way. We have other grant funders, small grants, that we write grants all over the place. One of the things we did so that we could write grants is we did create a nonprofit, and we write a lot of grants through the nonprofit for supportive services. Those can include vehicle repairs, work clothes, daycare. We've paid folks, they get a little behind on their daycare, they lose their daycare, and it's a spiral effect. They lose the daycare, they can't go to work one day, they end up losing their job. Same thing goes with vehicle repairs. Their car's not running, they don't make it to work, they lose their job, pretty soon they lose their daycare. In Mesa County, we have a waiting list for daycare assistance. So it's really important that they keep those services in place, and one small thing can throw everything off. So we are real careful to, if it's just a small vehicle repair they need, we try to keep enough funds to help them with that. We don't pay for everything. I mean, I want people to think that we're doing everything for these families, but we do when we know it's a situation that could cause them to derail. We do daily living skills training, cleaning, organizing, budgeting, all of those fun things. We do assist them with locating and keeping their housing. So if the family's having trouble with the landlord and they need someone to step in and mediate, we'll do that. We will transport them around town to help them find a unit if that's what they need. In most cases, they are able to find the unit on their own, but if we have a situation where they need a little more help, we can do that. One of the things we added this year that's been really awesome has been the in-home tutoring. We hired an AmeriCorps volunteer to do in-home tutoring with the families that were struggling. We didn't have tutoring for the high school children yet. We're still working on that, but we were able to get tutoring for some of our younger kiddos that were struggling. And it took a while. It took a couple of months before those families actually warmed up to her and would let her in the home and would let her sit with the kids at the kitchen table and work on, you know, their ABCs or whatever it was that they needed. And it really came along. The bad thing is now AmeriCorps, our AmeriCorps volunteer, her last year was this year. So we're now looking for a new AmeriCorps volunteer, and we'll have to build those relationships back up. And that just happens when you have a program that relies on staff that isn't full-time or paid staff. Some of the things we rely on our partner agencies for is daycare assistance, job search and employment. So we utilize our workforce center. We have an employee of the Housing Authority that works out of the workforce center. So when we have a family that's struggling, we can send them to Julie, and she can help them get through the door, get in there and get on the computer and do whatever they need to do to get their resume or whatever. So we have an employee there that we have direct access to. We have domestic violence counseling, of course, through our Latimer House. We get food from all over the place and furniture and clothing. We have one group here that is called Hope of the Grand Valley. We've been able to get whole houses of furniture through this. They mobilize the benevolent community, and they will adopt a family, and we've been able to provide for families that had nothing when they came to us. We've been able to give them their entire house set up through this, this benevolent partnership. Some of the policy issues, of course, was the HUD definition of homelessness. We already talked about that. Some of the things we saw that we really worked on were clear policies regarding the children's attendance in school, making sure that that was really drilled into our families when they came on the program, that that is not optional. Your kids have to go to school. It's also important to share your policies with all of your partners and let them have input. Every 2 years before we began a new cycle, we sat down with our partners, and we put together the policies as one group. So the policies come from everyone. We also do a selection committee for our families. So when a family is referred, we sit down with our partners, and the person who makes the referral advocates for that family, and we decide as a group whether or not that family will be placed into the program. We do a lot of communication. We share our forms. We do a lot of emailing. So now I'll get into some of the results on my side, and Cathy will talk about some results on her side. But what we've seen is that 79% of our children increased their grades. 80% increased their attendance, which we found to be huge. The 80% of attendance really helped stabilize these families. 58% of our children increased their CSAT performance. Our next step families, and let me just say about these statistics really quick, that these are from the 2008 to 2010 period. So this was results from our 2 years from our second grant cycle. Our next step families experienced a 28% increase in their income from the time they enrolled in the program. Let me just say about that, it seems like that's not a huge number, but it takes more than 2 years to get these families stable. It really does. When these are some very difficult families to work with, and they come to us a lot of times with no income. So a 28% increase, we're really pleased with that. Some of the teachers we've talked to have reported that the kids in her classroom, she was able to teach. She wasn't having to focus as much time on that one student because they came better prepared, came with their homework done because they had a place to do their homework. I can't imagine having to do homework out of your car or by, you know, candlelight at the park, wherever it is that they're staying. So definitely improved the kids' performance in school and their behavior. The parents reported that the children were doing a better job of getting their homework done. And we also saw that the parents were investing more time in their children's schoolwork. We make them sign up for Parent Bridge when they come to us, which is a service that our school district provides where families can go in and look at their kids' grades and their attendance and their lunch balances, all of that stuff. So we get them signed up for that immediately. We noticed the family mobility has decreased. Most of our families moved one time. They moved into their new unit and they didn't move again for the 2 years. So that was a good result. And then I'll let Cathy talk a little bit about these CSAP scores and that kind of thing.
This is our most current data, and CSAP, our Colorado Student Assessment Program, has changed quite a bit actually in the last 2 years in terms of being able to provide individual growth data for kids. So this is an average of total scale score in CSAP reading. So that would mean kids 3rd through 10th grade, because those are our kids who take CSAP. So what we did was we pulled a comparison of our next step students versus their homeless peers, and that's because really without next step that would be this group. So we didn't do the comparison of their housed peers, non-homeless, but we did compare next step to homeless. And as you can see in every year, and again this is a composite, our next step students far outperformed their homeless peers, and they have performed better each year, as you can tell. So this is, longitudinal with the same group of students that have been our second round of housed kids. And this is just a graph, and this wouldn't surprise anybody, but this is a comparison of NWEA, which is another standardized test we use, between our homeless and non-homeless students, and that's at 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade in the spring of 2009, so a little older data, but just really to illustrate the need on the part of homeless students to be able to have some stabilizing factor to help with their academic achievement as well.
So that is most of what we had to say. We do have a video that we wanted to show. I'm not sure how it's going to work because we're using the phone for audio. So if it doesn't work, will you tell me right away and we'll just shut it down? I'm not sure or we'll turn off the TV and we'll just use the TV for the audio. So we'll start that. This is one of our next step participants.
The hotel, and there were 5 of us sleeping in the car. People rather don't have to wonder where the next meal is going.
We've got a little bit of echo if you can turn down the audio on your side.
Understand the way how the mind was forced to live, and how desperately we wanted to get out of that situation, and how we were willing to do just about anything, And I need to emphasize here that we didn't put ourselves.
And we lost the audio on that. We'll go ahead and send a link to everybody on the webinar following the program.
But it was hard work, and that was a combination.
Sarah, did you lose the audio?
We did lose the audio on our end. It's got an echo, and then it seems as when you turn it down, we lose the audio. So we can go ahead and send a link out. If you want to email that to me, then we'll get that to folks who are attending the webinar.
Okay, we'll do that. How about that?
Super. So we have had a number of questions that have come in. So if our presenters have wrapped up their final remarks, we'll go ahead and transition to questions. Does that work?
That's fine with us.
Very good. And if you want to go ahead and switch the presenter over to us.
Okay, back to you.
Super. All right, so we've got a number of questions that have actually come in, so we'll go ahead and begin with, clearly this is it's a national model that you all have developed there in Grand Junction, and there's been a lot of excitement both regionally across the state of Colorado, and then of course folks nationally have been inquiring about how you have developed such a comprehensive collaboration. So can you talk a little bit about suggestions you may have in terms of just starting the dialogue between the numerous agencies that you have at the table for folks who are interested in replicating this model around Colorado?
You know, I can tell you that we really are blessed to be in a community that collaborates well and is used to working together. And I don't know if that started because of, you know, lack of resources that we really needed to leverage by working together. But I can tell you that when I started this program in the school district was not part of agency partnerships. And I just kind of had to be willing to take a little bit of a risk and get at the table. So I just found out where meetings were being held, when they were being held, and I really, truly invited myself to those groups because I believed that when we talk about housing, when we used to talk about housing and other kind of policy-related things around homelessness, people weren't remembering the face of youth in that. And so I took that on as my role to really make sure that people were understanding the impact was more than just with the parents, but about the kids too. And obviously, because of our community collaborations, was welcomed into that. But I really had to kind of get myself invited to the table.
Very good. It's also very impressive the number of community partners that you all at REACH are collaborating with. Can you share a little bit about that cultivation process? It's so impressive, the number of folks who are pitching in to support these families.
It is. You know, I think that also started with a willingness to, we started with our agencies. You know, when we began the program, it was brand new. We had never had anything. We didn't have any families identified as homeless in the school district because no one had done outreach. So what we first did was we invited ourselves to the Homeless Coalition group. And then, you know, by talking about the kids, by talking about the needs, then we had people say, oh, would you come speak to our Lions Club group? I'm a Lion. Will you come speak to that group? Or we had some people say, I belong to St. Matthew's. Would you like to come talk to our, you know, community giving group? Things like that. And we got our name out there and we got the word out there. And then we piggybacked on other agencies when they were doing fundraisers or when they were doing information spots. We really piggybacked and said, please make sure you mention that there are 500 homeless students in District 51. So we really just got into as many different and varied places as we could. We used our personal connections, we used our professional connections just to be allowed to speak. And we didn't start out asking for money or asking for support. We got out asking for people to spread the word that there were 500 homeless kids that needed support. So, you know, people didn't kind of turn away a little bit because they thought we were coming after funds. You know, we really just wanted people to share the message to start out with. And then the funds and the supportive stuff came as community projects and everything when they understood and realized the need we had.
We have another question here for you, Cathy. Do you work with the Nurse Family Partnership or HRSA, Home Visitation Programs?
You know what? We were working with them for quite a while, and I don't know, I think that partnership still exists in a smaller scale than it used to, and I don't know if that's due to a personnel change there or what happened with that, but when you just said that, it reminded me that that's one partnership we have not nurtured, but we used to be involved with them. Okay.
Well, that question came from Anne Marie Arbo, so I can give you her contact info if you'd like to follow up there. This is for you, Lori. Having the years experience you do, how long do you really think it takes to stabilize a family? You said 2 years, but in reality, how long do you feel it takes to actually stabilize a family?
Well, we get 2 years with this grant, so I definitely think it's longer than 2 years. And it depends. Every family's different. Some of our families come to us and it's just a situational homelessness issue where they came, you know, they were doing really well and some tragic event happened and caused them to get where they are and they just need a little bit of support to get back on track. And then we have some of these chronically homeless families that have honestly blown through every housing program in Grand Junction, and next step ends up being their last opportunity to, you know, to get housing in our community. And those families often take, 2, 3, 4 years, honestly, to get stable. And we have a family right now that we're still working with that was from our first grant period, from 2006. And, in 2008, she was able to transfer to a voucher. She did okay for a little while, and then she's struggling again. And our caseworker, even though she's got her 30 Next Step family, she's still working with this family who has relapsed and is now back in treatment, just trying to keep that family, going. So it can be ongoing. But the good thing about that is this family's still housed. She's in the same place she was when she came to us in 2006, and her child is still in school. Mm-hmm. So, if we can I feel like if we can just break the cycle for the children, and do what we can for the parents, but if those children don't become homeless as adults because of our intervention, then I feel like we've done our job.
Mm-hmm. And as you've mentioned, the circumstances vary widely from family to family, but if you can keep those kids in school, as you clearly are, you have a great chance of breaking the cycle, so that's really powerful. We have just a number of questions coming in here, and luckily we've got the time to answer them, so please do keep them coming. A couple technical questions here. How do you determine the school of origin for homelessness, since they are moving around?
Yeah, you know what, that by law and by definition, that is either where they were identified as homeless or the school where they were previously enrolled prior to that identification. And again, it's all about those connections, trying to keep them where they can make peer and adult connections. So that is the legal definition, where they were identified as homeless or just previously to their identification where they were enrolled. Okay.
We have another tech question here. How do you know you're going to have a Section 8 voucher available for them at the end of the 2-year program?
Well, the good thing, well, I don't know if you want to call it good or bad, but in our program, we have pretty healthy turnover. So we have had no problem with being able to give them a voucher. We turn over about 2% of our vouchers a month, so we had no problem. Other communities, I know they're not as fortunate, or it depends on the month. I mean, sometimes you're glad you have turnover, sometimes you're not in that program. But in this case, we've been fortunate enough to be able to give them a voucher, so we've been able to just build that into our program.
Great.
Yeah, and of course, when they come to us through the Next Step program, they're put on our list immediately. So by the time their 2 years is up, they've usually come to the top of the list anyway.
Mm-hmm. We have one attendee who joined a bit late and is hoping that we can review how the program is funded, the Next Step program. So if you wouldn't mind just reviewing that quickly, and I will note that we have recorded today's webinar, so it will be available in its entirety, warts and all, after the program. So we'll send that out, and again, of course, we'll send a copy of that video. That looks so good. All righty. So can you remind us how the program is funded?
Certainly, yeah. It's funded through home funds, through the Division of Housing, and we use the tenant-based rental assistance model there through the home funds. And then our case manager is funded through the Department of Human Services. And then the rest of our funding, and our case manager isn't fully funded through the department, so we get the majority of it, but not all of it. So the rest of the funds come from United Way and then other private grant sources. We write a ton of grants for this program.
Excellent. What happens with the families who make more than 30% AMI, who don't have the capability of getting into a home-based rental assistance on their employment? Is there a referral system in place?
Well, that's what the beauty of the referral process that we use when we sit down and we talk about these families in a referral roundtable type situation. We can talk about the family. If the family doesn't qualify for Next Step for some reason, probably 80% of the time, someone else around the table has something that they can offer that family. We have, in very few circumstances, had families that weren't housed somehow through that process. So, I mean, a lot of times it's just that maybe they end up through the FUP program because they're still under the 50% for that, or they end up going to the shelter through their transitional housing program. So we've had pretty good luck at getting people placed. Catholic Outreach has this transitional program. We've been able to get people placed there if they're over the income limit.
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases, we were able to use another small little partnership that we had developed that we basically matched families with landlords. So we utilized that program as well, and landlords that we know that had an affordable unit and families who maybe just needed deposit assistance. We have a small deposit assistance program here at the Housing Authority that we can use for families that doesn't have income limits attached to it. And it's a deposit guarantee program, so no money leaves the Housing Authority. It doesn't go to the landlord, but we provide a certificate to the family, and the family takes it to the landlord, and we guarantee that that family will make that deposit in payments. So the family may make well, usually it's 8 payments, so they'll make the deposit over 8 payments. And every month our obligation, goes down by a month because they're paying the landlord. And then at the end of the 8 months, our obligation goes away completely, and the landlord should have been paid in full by the family. And the only time we would ever have to pay out is if the family left damages and left before they had made all their payments. And we actually had not paid any money out on that in probably the 5 or 6 years we'd had it until just last month we made our first payment. And it was only $200. So it's been a good model. It's worked well.
Yeah, yeah. Can you share a little bit about who's involved in the family selection process? Who's at the table for that?
Sure. There's the school district is there. There are people from the Latimer House, which is our domestic violence shelter. They're also a referral source. There are people from Catholic Outreach, which is another homeless services agency that has some transitional housing but works with homeless youth. The Housing Authority, obviously. The department, are there people there from the Department of Human Services are there with us staffing?
Homeward Bound?
Homeward Bound, yeah, the shelter is there helping us staff folks. I think that's about it.
Great. So one of our attendees has asked why there are still homeless peers in the community. Are there not enough resources to get all the families into the Next Step program?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we have 30 slots for 500 kids.
We identified 303 families last year just with the school district. So that doesn't include families that have children under school aged. Mm-hmm. And so this serves 10% of the kids we can identify because of the limited resources.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Clearly, the wraparound services through the Next Steps and REACH programs can help keep kids in school and improve their educational outcomes. But for the children who aren't in the program, are there other truancy measures in place that can help keep kids in school? How does that relationship with the families get built over time outside of these particular programs?
Yeah, well, you know what, outside of REACH, I couldn't respond to that because REACH is serving every homeless student in District 51. And so we are tracking attendance and we're tracking grades through our advocates. And those advocates are working directly in the homes and in the schools with these families to keep them stabilized. So whether they're in Next Step or not, there is an advocate walking alongside these families in terms of their time at school district in School District 51.
Great. Will longitudinal follow-through be part of the program? How well are you keeping the families? How are you keeping the families to stay, and how well are the students doing over the long run? Do you all have that data?
That is our latest effort, is to get into where the kids are that were in our programs previously, our 2 previous years. We've been working on that over the last couple of months, just pulling together family data, interviewing the families. So we'll have some good data soon. I don't have that right now. One of the problems with this program and one of our big challenges has been we barely keep it funded to do the basics. And, you know, I've had several talks with lots of people about this program that, you know, if I could do all of the research that everybody would like me to do, I would do it, but it's very difficult to find administrative funding. And so in our case manager, you know, typically people who do case management work are really, really good at case management, but numbers and data collection are not their thing. So it's kind of one of those things that we've been keeping on top of the best we can. Mm-hmm. But we did just start a big push to pull together all of our data for our next, because we're going to need to ask for our next round of funding soon. So we should have some good data from our 2006 to 2010 kiddos here real soon.
Excellent. You talked a little bit about some of the challenges. Do you have any other lessons learned or best practices that you would advise other communities about? Things to avoid?
I would say, you know, one of the things we learned in our first round, our 2006, 2008 round, is we pretty much just opened the program and took everybody who came, everybody. It really was a pretty loose set of requirements of who got in. We learned that that makes it tough for your case manager when they have 50 families, that all of the families are in such peril that they just couldn't keep up. So we really narrowed our focus with the next round, and then with this round, with it only being 30, we were able to we also kind of had it down to where we knew that we needed to be pretty selective. And we really needed to interview the families first to make sure that their commitment to the case management was there. If it wasn't there, and we knew right from the beginning that, look, they just didn't want it, then we knew it wasn't going to work.
I can also add to that, and that is that, you know, Lori wrote the grant to the Division of Housing and knew all of the, you know, technical what had to happen with those funds. But it was really important to the agencies in this group to be able to look over those policies and say, we really need to add this, like we really needed to add that attendance component, you know, those kinds of things. And for the agencies to say, oh, I can't really abide by that, could we do this instead? And really to, for Lori to allow us to have that input. And also one of the kind of governing rules that came out of it was that families had to be in good standing with all of the agencies, and that was critical because, and that means it was critical for us to be at the table when we were staffing these families, because we may not have known that a family we were referring to Next Step had totally blown out with the Housing Authority and with Homeward Bound, our homeless shelter. And so we might be really advocating hard for a family that we really shouldn't have been advocating for because it was clear that they were going to not be successful. So that staffing process and having everybody at the table making that decision and the ability for all agencies to weigh in on the policies was really critical to the success as well.
Excellent. So we've talked a little bit about obviously the attendance records and the improvement in CSAP scores and overall educational performance. But Cathy, can you talk a little bit about the change that you witness in the kids after they've been somewhat stabilized and how that affects other areas of their schooling and social connections and things?
Absolutely. It really is the whole child that is affected by a program like this because, like I said, kids who are highly mobile don't make connections, they don't make friends, they don't make connections with adults, they have much higher acting out behaviors. So as they become stabilized, they become more comfortable with the school setting, with their responsibilities as a student. The families, the parents get more connected with the schools, begin to build relationships, so they're more willing to come in and discuss with a teacher how they can support or advocate for their child or those kinds of things. Kids begin to make friends, and the more socially connected they are, the better they do academically. So it really is about the whole child. They become much more like their housed peers in their comfort level and their connections. They stop standing out is what it comes down to. They start actively participating. They get involved in extracurricular and elective type classes. It really is a transformation for the child. They don't feel like they're different from their peers, and they're not stigmatized by their peers because they stop standing out. It really is a beautiful thing, and teachers can teach. You know, the statistics say that not only are a homeless child's test scores lower, but all of the kids in a classroom where there are highly mobile students also suffer academically. And that's because the teacher has to pay more attention to a homeless or transitional student. They have to pay more attention to them academically and behaviorally, but they also repeat things, because if there's a group in their class that are highly mobile, they have to go over things again and again and again. So all students in the classroom with highly mobile students suffer. So we not only improve the test scores of the homeless students themselves, but also the kids who are in their classroom with them.
Incredible. Yeah. Thank you both. We're just about out of time here. So if anybody has any final questions, please do post them to the questions tab in your toolbar there. And otherwise, Lori and Cathy, do you have any closing comments for us?
I think, I get a lot of requests for information on this program, and what I would say to everyone is that you need to start having the conversation with your school district. Sit down, talk with them, and make sure that they are on board, because without your REACH program, and I know not everybody has a REACH program, but they should have something similar. Without them on board, this program will not work. You cannot access the school level data, the school policy procedures, all of the things that you need within the school district without those folks. When we have a kiddo struggling, we can't just go to the teacher. A case manager can't go to the teacher, but a REACH advocate can intervene and help through that. And so even though the kid is housed, we've still been able to utilize those REACH advocates to help with the school district. So it's really important that people start with their school district, because that's what this program's about. It's about the kiddos. So get with your school districts first, and then the other thing is just start building your funding, because the funding for this program, you would think that funders would love the idea of stabilizing families and keeping kiddos in school, but I'll tell you, it is tough. It is tough to keep this program afloat. And honestly, Cathy and I, when we first got this started and we were doing a lot of the work on this, it was done, we did this in after hours, off time, because we just had to pull it together. And it took a lot to get it started. Once it got started and got it rolling, it was better, but you still struggle for every penny that you bring into this program. So,
and I can tell you that for people to make that connection with their school district, if you go to the CDE's website, Colorado Department of Education website, and type in homeless, you'll get a list of every district and their district liaison, who's the person in my position, and that's where you start to find out what their program is about and how you can get access. That'll give you an email and a phone number for the person to contact in every district. There's not a REACH program in every district, but there is a district homeless liaison in every district. It's federal mandate.
Excellent. Well, thank you both for paving the way on this program and for sharing the message and all of your lessons learned and helping other communities, as I know you have been for a couple of years now, to try and initiate similar programs. It's an incredible service to the state, so thank you. We've had a couple of questions about some of the stats that we offered earlier on the impacts of housing and education, and they were pulled from a collection of research and data that was provided by the National Housing Conference and Enterprise Communities. And we'll go ahead and send that link out. It is here on your screen currently, but we'll get you a hot link when we follow up on today's program. Wanted to offer a quick plug if you're new to housing and new to Housing Colorado, as I know some of you are. Wanted to let you know that we have our largest event of the year coming up. It's our annual conference. It's in Vail, Colorado, the 11th of October through the 14th. And we'll have 42 workshops this year, and several of them will include facilitated roundtable discussions on homelessness prevention and services. And so we certainly invite you to join us for a day or for all 4 days if your schedule allows. And you can find more information on that online at housingcolorado.org. Again, wanted to thank the Human Services Network of Colorado. I know several of the folks on the line are members of that organization as well. And the network has an annual resource and networking event coming up. It's a fair, and it'll be held on September 28th, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., and that's on the Metro State campus. You can find more information at their website, which is listed here. That's it for today. Again, wanted to thank our presenters for sharing their expertise and, again, for paving the way on this program. It's very inspiring. And for all of you for joining us and providing so many active listening questions and hanging with us throughout the entire webinar. So we do appreciate everyone's time, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks, everybody.